Hey guys, it's Woody the Unexceptional Gamer, and here's the genesis of this commentary. So, on Monday, someone asked me what I thought of Moab taters. If you're unfamiliar with this term and YouTube nonsense and all that stuff, it's essentially the concept of people using teams of five, right, themselves plus five more, to boost their skills or to boost their gameplay, to multiply what they have to offer. And usually the guys that do it are getting amazing gameplays, right? Like, several Moabs in one game. They're getting, whatever, it's just really good gameplays. But with the assist of constant UAVs, always having ballistic vests thrown at their feet and things like that. So they asked me, hey, Woody, what do you think? And I said, it's not too much different than the guys that quit every game that doesn't go their way. It's just another way of, going for YouTube games as opposed to just playing like a normal player. And you get to decide whether it's good or not. If you're curious, I'll throw an annotation on the screen. You can hear my full explanation. So, subscriber and a fellow Redditor sent me this article, and it was from an economist named Will Wilkinson, and that caught my attention. And he talks about how real freedom is the absence of monopoly. So in the article, he compares his government to his local supermarket. And he says that he feels like he has more of a say about what goes on in his local supermarket than he does in his government. He says that, when he's at the supermarket, he gets to choose what he puts into his cart. And right there, that kind of selection as to what happens to his money gives him a kind of freedom that doesn't happen elsewhere. And, I heard that and it sort of clicked in my head because, like, I follow politics a lot. I don't talk about it on my channel as much as I spend time talking about it, reading and such, keeping up in my free time. But, I think everybody agrees that there are a lot of things that their government buys that aren't their personal projects. Maybe you don't like a war in here or there. Maybe you don't like welfare. Maybe you don't like Medicare. Whatever it is, what your government does, it just feels out of control. It doesn't feel like you get to choose. Whereas at your supermarket, you do. And, but then on the other hand, the supermarket is, in theory, not your choice. But what you put in your cart also determines what they stock. If something doesn't sell, they won't carry that. If you ask for something and it's successful, then they probably will carry that. And the more I read the article, and it's not very long, I'll link it in the description. The more it kind of clicked with me. It was like, yeah, he's kind of right. It does seem like at the supermarket, I have more of a say about what goes on in there than I do in my government. And then as I thought about it more, it's like, wow, I feel like this also applies to YouTube. You don't get to directly vote for what people do and say and how they behave on YouTube, but you do have a huge impact, right? You vote with your feet, you vote with your likes and your dislikes, and you vote with your sharing and your support, and you can be Team Gamertag or something else, or both. You can always be both. But on YouTube, you get to determine what's good and what's bad. You get to determine what makes a guy successful, and that's your choice. And I thought it was kind of a neat little concept. Even though you don't get to vote, the absence of monopoly, the fact that you have choices, the fact that you can just go somewhere else if you're not liking what you're seeing is maybe even more powerful than the ability to vote for people who vote on your behalf, which is how most governments work. I wonder what the world would be like if you could take this concept and apply it to actual government, right? And I'm afraid government discussions are kind of boring, but like a totally new concept. As it is now, you can't easily just choose between the United States and Norway and whatever, Holland, and I don't know, I could go on. But, because you can't just switch countries. Like, they don't let you do that. I can't necessarily just go and become a Finnish citizen if I decide to. But, I can do that equivalent when I choose between Target and Walmart. I wonder, what the world would be like if people could easily transfer between countries, and countries had to, consider themselves competitors of one another for population. You're like, hey, man, if you live here, then you're going to get this kind of freedom. You're going to get this kind of, security. You're going to get this kind of law enforcement. You're going to get this kind of, whatever, fire department, or I could go on. if the kind of freedom that you have when choosing between YouTubers and choosing between I can't seem to even get hit markers on this guy. Choosing between YouTubers and choosing between retail stores and choosing between all these things, if you had that kind of freedom when you got to choose where you live and, you know, what your environment's like, I wonder how the world would change. You know, I don't know. I'm not sure it would be better or worse, but it would certainly be interesting, at least to you know, to guys like me, that like, yeah, you know, like it, you know, I like this country's views on gun laws. I like this country's views on having a safety net. I like this country's views on you know, peace or war or security or whatever. And you could just easily bounce over and become a citizen of that country. That'd be pretty interesting. Or would everybody rush towards the countries with the most money, and then all of a sudden, you know, that money would be divided in a way that made it not the richest per capita anymore? I don't know what kind of impact it would have, but like the theory of it captures my opinion. You know, if you applied this absence of monopoly is true freedom philosophy to governments, then that would change things up a lot. And I just thought I'd talk about this. New video coming soon. Bye. Alright, show that like button some love. There's 2 videos you may have missed. If you're new around here, you can subscribe in the top right corner. And as always, have a good day.